Hey everybody! So today, as I promised, I'm gonna tell you about how my project, the Raptor, looks like now that I finally printed it out, 3D printed it. And if you want to know the peculiarities of how I made it, or if you would like a refresher on that, you can check out my previous video, which I'll put the link to in the description below. And yeah, so let's go. So this is my 3D printed Raptor. As you can see, there's actually quite a lot of interesting things about it, how it looks like. So yeah, this is from the back. All these things that are supporting him are called supports, and they're there for a reason. As you remember, when we were done with our Raptor in Blender, it didn't have any supports at that time. However, you can actually create them in Blender, actually using the trick with just selecting some kind of spot on the Raptor and just pulling, let's say, this area down till it reaches this platform. And yeah, so what you would like to support is all the areas which you believe will need supporting. But typically it's actually a good idea to definitely have supports, first of all, and when you're 3D printing something, and secondly, pay very close attention, of course, to what you're trying to provide support to. Basically, what you should be aiming for is to support basically all the things that are above the ground, right? So like here's the platform, right? And let's say here's like the mouth area of the Raptor, which is definitely without support would be pretty far away from the ground, right? So what you would like to do is to provide support from the platform to his mouth to add the additional stability to the Raptor. So that way, in case of something, it'll definitely not fall. And you can do it as, of course, just for safety reasons, just in case of something, right? But another reason, which is much more important, is to consider is that in case you miss something, so for example, if the Raptor, for example, isn't standing exactly on the platform, like you thought you placed it on the platform, but is not actually placed on the platform, then quite of an interesting situation might occur, which you might want to avoid. And that situation actually happened to my Raptor when I was 3D printing it. So, for example, over here, right, if you look very, very closely to his legs, you might notice a very, very small supports, right? Right now you should be seeing it very clearly. And yeah, it's actually a very thin layer of supports, and I didn't add them myself. I noticed that at the last minute, once my model was finished, and I uploaded it to Cura program, which I'll be talking about later. But so what happened is, when I was 3D printing it, is that I thought that I provided all the possible supports needed to 3D print my model. However, when I started 3D printing, what happened is, first of all, the legs, right? The legs, I noticed, weren't, when I started 3D printing them, weren't getting attached to the platform. So as soon as the 3D printer was done with 3D printing the platform, it started 3D printing the legs, but the legs weren't attached to the platform. And they were just basically by themselves, and they started getting pretty weird and curly. And yeah, they were just on one place on the platform, and another leg was lightly attached to the platform by like one string or something. So yeah. Also, this material that you're seeing right now, it is a filament. So there are two types of printers. There's the filament printer, 3D printer, something you would hear being used more often when it comes to 3D printers. However, there's also the resin or resin. Not sure how to pronounce it, but it's a different type of material which you can also use to 3D print, and it is used on slightly different looking 3D printers than the ones for filament. Also, when I was 3D printing the platform at that time, because I did not add the additional support to it, it had just this first light layer. It's super thin. Now, as you look right now, right, on the bottom, it has a very good support, very much like a true raft looking. And all this support is something that you can actually set up in Cura program, which I touched on before in this video, like lightly mentioned, but yeah, we'll talk some more about it. So as you can see, it is a very nicely patterned platform. I probably would not be able to 3D model it myself this well. It just, yeah, it's very nice that Cura provides with this feature of making such complicated and sturdy supports. And you can actually like see also there's quite some fillable amount of space from the top to the actual bottom. So okay, so that were some of the important things I wanted to cover. Now let's get to the other things, no less important. So as you can see, there are just a lot of supports everywhere. In fact, let me show you how the model looked like when I was done with my Blender program and decided to send it here to Cura. So as you can see, so this is Cura program. Sometimes you would also see the word Ultimaker, and as well as on the 3D printers made by the Ultimaker, you'll also like see either like the word Ultimaker or something like that, but Ultimaker and Cura are used together quite often. In some places, let's see, well, if you go to their website or like want to see some 3D printers that they're making, you can find it easily in Google or something. But yeah, so Ultimaker, Cura is the program which is free to use and to download. Pretty nice printers, actually, but yeah, I'll talk about it later. So this is the program right now. So this is how it looks like when you downloaded it. I'd say it is quite intuitive, not very easy, might not be very easy to understand when you first start using it. However, just try finding some videos on YouTube or whatever how to set it up. there are some options for setting this program specifically for your 3D printer. However, you don't have to. So I don't have a 3D printer. I go to other places like library or wherever where they happen to have the 3D printer. And yeah, this is where I 3D printed my Raptor. Yeah, universities, if they have the Maker Lab or your local library, just go and ask them if you can 3D print, if you can use their 3D printer. So basically what I do when I get to this program is, well, first of all, I open the Cura program, right? So if it was closed, then I would just go over here to search, type in Cura, open it, and now that it is open, as you can see, I can go to my files, and this is just already the folder that I opened here to 3D print, and these are my files that I saved in STL, as you can see. Yeah, once I was done with 3D modeling in Blender, so yeah, this is how it should look like, the final version in STL, ready to go to Cura, and then get modified by Cura, and then get sent to 3D printer to 3D print. Like this. Yeah, to actually 3D print your model. So these are basically like the same project, just different versions of them. So let's go to this one, for example, right? So let's say I want to open this file. Or, yeah, actually I could have opened also from the file over here. Yeah, like this, and you choose a file, but it doesn't really matter. So this is how my model looked like with Blender modifications. So as you can see, so this is the support that I built, this is the support that I built, and the support's over here. So when I was making them, as I told you, I clicked on the spot over here, started dragging down to the platform, and hoped that it would be fully supported in the end. However, as you can see, there are quite some things that I've missed when adding the supports. And hence, like, some of those places here are in red, right? So it's basically telling me that there's not enough support in these areas. Oh, and here, the legs, for example, right? That area that I told you that turned out to be very fragile. Yeah, so I did not add the supports over here. They had to be added by Cura program. So here, as you can see, you could add some more supports. Arms, definitely as well, just like the mouth got supported. The arms should also get their support. Legs and the tail. As you can see, there's already some supports for the tail. However, interestingly, if you look at them, right, like, let's say this support, this yellowish one, right? So what that support is, it is this diagonally looking angled up support. It is not like straight from the top to the bottom in line, right? Like this one's nice vertical ones. But yeah, looking at this kind of support, you can tell that with the way it would be supporting the tail, well, you probably could do it much better than this. You could add some supports like this area, right? The tail is like kind of thin in this area and gets kind of heavyish over here, so you might want to add some support over here as well. And considering the length of the tail, you might want to add some supports along the length as well. So yeah, another interesting thing is, as you noticed, remember how I told you how I had to change the texture of my Raptor from balloonish looking to kind of triangle-ish looking? Well, if you pay attention over here, you'll notice that it is indeed not balloony looking at all. It is indeed kind of unevenish. I wouldn't really say it's super triangulish, but yeah, the atom for it is there. Yeah, it's kind of uneven, right? Right. So, how would you add the supports here in Cora? Oh, another interesting thing, if you would like to rotate, oh, and this is the message that you would sometimes run into, prompting you to do some modifications, add some supports, but yeah. Let's try to turn it around so you can see it like this blue part over here, right? This blue support. Let's turn around our raptor. To do that, you would go over here to rotate. Oh, and here's the circle, right? So now you can rotate the raptor. Let's rotate it. And as you can see, all this blue, it is actually, the blue support was part of this yellowish support. So this is all one single support, which is this diagonal one. So yeah, Kura added some more supports, this one's. And let's take a look at how exactly it did it. Let me turn it back around first. Okay. So here's this menu, right? So if you want to see the menu, you just go here. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can modify. Also interesting here, as you can see, 10%. Let's find it over here in the settings. So as you can see, this symbol stands for infill. And infill is basically, you go over here, right? Oh, here it is, infill density. It basically tells you what this option means. Adjust the density of infill of the print. So basically, how dense do you want the material of your figure to be? So do you want it to be thin, kind of fragile looking, or do you want it to be thick, like actually thick? Depends, of course, on the purpose of what you're trying to do with your model. Like for me, it was just for presentation purposes for the most part, what I needed it for. So for me, I could easily choose the lowest option here provided, right? So 10 to 15. I don't need it to be any more denser than that. So I went with 10. Infill pattern, as you can see, there's this description on the side as well, what it means, but you can definitely explore some more material, temperature for printing, speed. Let's check this out. Print speed. So the speed and the infill would be two major options you would typically want to mess with to figure out the time, to shorten it up or make it longer. Depends. Whatever your goal is to reach with when you're 3D printing. When you're slicing it and then 3D printing. See, like this button, slice on the bottom. Yeah, before we 3D print, we're gonna want to slice it up, and it will tell us the time it will take us to 3D print. But yeah, over here, as you can see here, is this support option, generate support. So what it does is, let's say we remove this, right? We're removing it. Let's see what changed. So as you can see, nothing changed here, right? So my supports are still remaining. But let's see if there's anything else happening. Well, I don't see it at the moment. Let's try slicing it up and see how it goes without the generate support. Three hours, 17 minutes with the settings. So at the speed of 50 and infill density of 10. Now, as you can see, let's say I want to change it to 15, right? So watch how it's gonna change the time. So now it bumped it up. So, and this is the time for 3D printing, by the way. So now instead of 3 hours and how many minutes did we say it was? 17 something? Now it's gonna take us 22 minutes. Three hours, 22 minutes. Now let's try changing speed, right? So changing speed will affect the quality. A good speed to aim for, like the lower speed, the better. But it also depends on the time, of course, how much time you're willing to give on 3D printing. So 70 isn't that bad, so you could go with the 70 as well. Let's see. And you see how greatly our time gets reduced. So this is something you can play around with, the settings. Now let's actually check support. So something did happen or will happen eventually, because the time got added and because we clicked the generate support now. But yeah, it is a very good option to have to let Cura decide where the support will actually be needed. Just leave it to Cura, click that button or click this option with the check mark, and yeah, let the Cura do its magic. Now build plate adhesion type. This is what I told you about, the raft looking bottom portion. Yeah, something I did not model myself either, but something that Cura could add as support to your platform to make it to make it more durable and less fragile. Let's see if I could actually show you. Let's see. So as you can see over here, right? So through this square holes, this top layer behind it, it's comprised of a very thin filament lines following each other, so one after another. So the bottom of it is kind of going to be like this top, but actually no. So once you let Cura do its magic, so this top portion, as you can see, it is very tightly pressed looking, very neat, and with some additional support added wherever needed. So like these lines right on the edges, for example, they're very nice, and they were actually added by Cura as well. This on the bottom, they're different, right? So you can see how smooth it is over here. So on the bottom, the lines are fatter and they're slightly differently structured, for sure. No, advanced features. Over here, if you go over here, right? So these settings are basic at the moment. But you can also choose between advanced and expert. Let's go to advanced ones. And over here we get to see much more options. Yeah, speeds, a lot of settings here. Let's go, for example, support, right? Support structure. Now, aside from the option of normal, we also see the option of tree. Let's try tree. Tree is creates a support structure directly below the overhanging parts, and tree support creates branches towards the overhanging areas that support the model on the tips of those branches, support density, and support top distance. So yeah, you can experiment with these things, support pattern, triangles, or something else. So yeah, and there's also the expert mode, whichever one you like. Oh yeah, 3D printers, let's talk about them. So as I said, this Raptor is made of filament. But if I wanted, I could just as easily go to a different 3D printer and 3D print this model using the resin material. That material would look slightly different from this one. Typically, if you see this kind of lines, looking kind of fragile-ish, right? So it's kind of like line after line, right? Kind of in this style, as you can see through the squares. That is typically how you can tell that it's a filament. With the resin, it is typically it's gonna be kind of the lines, you will not really see them. They won't be like clearly patterned out, and most of the time they would be like the material, like the model, will end up looking kind of more closely knit with its layers, less visible with the spaces in between the layers, and might appear kind of more together. If you want to get your own 3D printer one day, I'll actually put down the link to how to set up Cura for your specific 3D printer down in the description below as well. It was a pretty great video I ran into on YouTube. So if I had my 3D printer, if I ever wanted to get one, that video I believe would be pretty helpful for me. Typically, what you might need when it comes to 3D printers is either the SD card or the port, like looking like this. So you just plug it into your computer, and another side of this cord would go into your 3D printer. Or it can also be just the jump drive. So it all kind of depends on the specific printer. So I could just drop my files, drop these files into the jump drive, and then plug it into the 3D printer and let it do its magic. However, if you're thinking of buying an SD card, I would kind of recommend not doing that. Just figure out first of all what kind of 3D printer you're going to be using, if it's going to be your own or somebody else's, and just adjust to that 3D printer, how it is meant to transfer files. So through SD card or through the jump drive. So yeah, it's like, yeah, just figure it out first of all. Because like, for example, in my case, after watching that YouTube video, I thought at first that, okay, so I definitely want to get something like an SD card because I don't want to just, like, put connect this to computer and another side to 3D printer and just leave it like this for hours, um, not letting it go to sleep. As the video was saying, don't let your computer go to sleep while it's 3D printing using this cord. So yeah, I thought I'll just go and get an SD card, throw the files there, plug them into a computer, put in into a 3D printer, and just leave it like that for hours, let it do its thing. You can even leave it 3D printing overnight like this. You just, yeah, as soon as you send the command to the 3D printer to print the file, it will do that. But SD card, at first when I went to get it, well, it's always a good idea to do some research before you do that, because SD cards specifically for 3D printing, they are like SD cards for just computers in general. Because when you're choosing the SD card just for your computer, right, you would typically do that just to give more storage area to your computer. So you might get something as, like, let's say 128 gigabytes SD card for your computer, like to plug into your computer. But when it comes to 3D printers, though, the SD cards for them should actually, as it turns out, not be as high in storage, but much and much lower. Don't exactly remember how much right now, but like very low, like 18 gigabytes or something, somewhere in that range. So as you can see, like greatly less compared to just the regular SD cards for the computers. So yeah, research like the SD card specifically for 3D printing, and that might save you some time and money. You will not have to return the SD card because it's just a wrong SD card. It's made for a different purpose. Anyway, yeah, just find out what 3D printer you're going to be using and go from there. Also, when I was 3D printing it, the 3D printer I noticed had a lot of different colors with the filament in it. So there was like red and green and blue and black and white. So I actually had the option to choose which one to use to print out my Raptor. So as you remember, my 3D model in Blender was green, right? But when it comes to actually 3D printing, as it turns out, you can actually choose which color you want to use of the filament for 3D print your model. So, like, I could even, I don't know, choose a blue filament and tell the 3D printer to make my Raptor blue. It could also be the possibility. Or I could make it black or white. So, yeah, the way it works is just you buy the filament, the color, whichever you want, you put it into 3D printer, and then it goes through its procedures of, preparing your 3D print, getting rid of some old filament, testing out the filament that you're feeding to it, if it can actually like fall, like if it's going through or not. And yeah, so all these typical procedures that 3D printers do before 3D printing. So this is how my model turns out to look like now that all the supports are off. As you can see, so this is the figure itself, and it doesn't have the platform or the supports. out of the supports, only this left on the small ones attached to the legs. But if I wanted, I could cut off them as well. They're pretty fragile and partially coming off already. So here are the stuff that I had to remove from it. Whole bunch of supports and the ground to which the model was attached. So as you can see, there are a whole bunch of holes, and you could tell that these are where the supports were attached to. So the legs were over here, and the main ones, these three big ones, as you can see. Interestingly, they were the supports that I created in Blender, but the other ones, these small dots, are where the more fragile ones were attached. And actually got to find out in the process that the supports that Cura creates, when you select the option of generate the automatic supports, they turn out to be pretty nice. They are fragile and they attach kind of lightly to the ground, so that's why basically there aren't like as much of the remainings from it left as in case with mine. Mine were also harder to remove as well, and you can tell that these holes are basically where my supports were attached, not the curves. So one big was over here, another one here, and the one at the tail, diagonal one, but probably because it was diagonal, it didn't like do much of a visual, wouldn't say damage, but yeah. So another thing worth mentioning is if I were to, let's say, wanted to attach the raptor back to the to this ground, right? So the way how I could do that is by using the 3D printing glue. There are glues for that, specifically in the market for that. And since these ones are pretty fragile, yeah, you can see basically just the line, one line of them. What you could do is use these supports, cut them off, and just add them like this. Make some additional support for the legs. That would give it more stability. Also, to cut them off, what I was using is dikes or diagonal cutters. So you can see they look like this. Pretty sharp over here, and they're very good for this. I find them to be like the best tool for this operation, for cutting off the supports, considering how sharp they are, and yeah, so it's not like just one blade but two blades together. It's more support and when you need to, you know, remove the item. Also, you could probably use the knife, like there's a specific hobby knife that you could use, and which I could use if I wanted to remove this fragile supports completely, but to me it doesn't really matter. I guess I'll just keep it the way it is right now, and maybe with time they'll fall off themselves, but to me it doesn't really matter at the moment. Also, about these holes, yeah, I can clearly see that there are holes here. Well, as long as you, like, attach it to something like this to kind of support, to make it stand, it wouldn't, like, really be that noticeable. Yeah, as you can see, like, right now it's not super noticeable, right? So, yeah, this is how you could go about it. Or you could just leave the raptor the way it is, and from the most angles you won't be able to see them anyway. So yeah, overall it looks pretty neat, and for me, like, the raptor was the major thing out of my project to have, so I might as well like keep this ground or throw it away as well as supports, but yeah, since they were part of my project, I guess I'll keep them all. Also, another thing, you might also see it in the video that I'll link into the description below. They basically going to be mentioning that when you're 3D printing, you want to make your model around 100 millimeters to send to your 3D printer. It can definitely be less, the less height you'll use, the smaller your model will be, the less time it will take for your 3D printer to 3D print. Or you can make it a little higher than 100 millimeters, but yeah, try not to go too much over than that. Anyway, so this was basically my takeout from how to 3D print and actually make your 3D models come into reality, and now have a very nice, neat looking raptor, and I'm so happy. Yay! My raptor is also happy. Yeah. Oh, also, when you're removing the supports, you'll kind of notice that the more supports you remove, the more it will be getting kind of shaky and unstable. So when there was like only one support around his stomach left, I could actually like push on his tail a little, and it was kind of shaking already. And once I removed that last support from the stomach, so along with that kind of pressure applied, this supports on the bottom of his feet also came off by themselves. So that's kind of how fragile they were with attaching. So it's kind of good that I created all these supports, and they kind of really helped out in the process. But now, yeah, since it is mostly just the raptor that I wanted to keep, I guess I could throw away the supports or something. But either way, yeah. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please give me the thumbs up, subscribe, leave me any suggestions what else you guys would like me to cover in my next videos, and thank you. Bye.